All right. Hello, everyone. It's 3 o'clock. I think I'm going to get us started to respect everyone's time today, and hopefully we have a lot more people that join us here today. We'll start with, my name is Tabitha White. I'm the chair of the Ellsworth Arbor Commission. Today marks our second public event since our establishment last August, and we are thrilled to be able to talk to everyone and foster educational events such as today's to help educate and inform our community about everything trees. Unfortunately, we're here today because we have all likely noticed that there's something strange happening to our beech trees in our forest. Trees that just last year had a canopy that was dense and nearly impossible to see through. Now, as you drive down the side of the road, you're able to peer deep into the woods, unlike you ever have before, from all the canopy loss. So we want to know what exactly is going on with our beech trees. And today we are lucky enough to have Aaron Bergdahl and Dr. Matthew Borden to tell us. We're going to start today's talk off with Aaron Bergdahl, who has been the staff forest pathologist for the Maine Forest Service since 2016. He's originally from Vermont and earned a bachelor's in forest biology from the University of Vermont. He earned a master's degree in plant ecology with minors in zoology and genetics at the University of Oulu in Finland, where he lived for 10 years. Very cool. He came to Maine from North Dakota, where he was the forest health manager for the North Dakota Forest Service for 7 years. And he also has a PhD student in and he was also a PhD student in plant pathology at North Dakota State University. Aaron is an avid gardener, fruit grower, and mushroom forager. So we'll start with you, Aaron. Thank you for joining us today.
I actually discussed things with Matt, and I think we decided that he was going to start out with some of the basic biology and symptomology of beech leaf disease, and then I was going to talk from a more Maine specific perspective, and then we'd shift back to him for some other aspects of the disease, and just conceptualizing it for a group like yours. So I will hand things over to Matt, and maybe you can introduce him, and then I'll chime in a little bit later. But thank you for the introduction.
Just trying to throw you for an entire loop, Tom.
Thank you both. Okay, I'll go back to Dr. Matthew Borden. He's a plant pathologist at the Bartlett Tree Research Laboratories in Charlotte, North Carolina. And Matt has also a practical experience in orchard and botanical garden pest management, plant problem diagnostics, and writing for Fine Gardening magazine. He gained a deep appreciation for integrated pest management while at Virginia Tech, followed by studies in landscape health and sustainable management strategies at the University of Florida. Take it away, Matt.
All right. Thanks, and sorry about that. Should have let you know. Okay, I'm going to share screen. And I will attempt to keep an eye on the chat box and the Q&A box. But feel free to stop me, Tabitha, if I miss anything. All right. You see the slide? Good? Excellent. Okay, so welcome everybody. I'm going to give a brief overview of the basics of BLD, the problem, and then again turn it back over to Aaron to talk more about the Maine specific situation. And then after that, he's going to turn it back over to me to talk about some of the management tools that we've been developing over the past several years. And then I'm also going to try to give you sort of a crash course perspective in how to approach this problem and make good decisions, rather than knee-jerk reactions, as sometimes is the case with these big, important, invasive problems. So let's get started. I will use this little laser pointer on here if possible. So let's just figure out where we're at first. Excuse me, I'm trying to advance the slide. There we go. So we're just discussing beech today, and we don't need to go into this at all, just that we're talking about Fagus grandifolia, the American beech, of course. This is the native species, and then also Fagus sylvatica, the European beech. The key differences are that the European beech is the species that we primarily use in the ornamental trade. So the copper beech, the weeping beech, the beech that you see all over New England at a lot of these grand old estates and such. These are primarily Fagus sylvatica cultivars, whereas you see the American beech out in the forest. Oh, a few more of the cultivars. But it is the American beech from an ecological perspective that is much more important. This is a nice YouTube presentation by Jean Epiphin at Rutgers that she has on YouTube if you want to check that out. But beech are considered a keystone species in much of their range in the forest for their nut production, particularly in areas where a lot of oaks have died off. They produce acorns, of course, and American chestnut has died off, which was another major masting crop. So beech are important. If you care more about the ornamental side, most of what you're looking at is European beech. If you focus on forestry and ecology, primarily the American beech is of interest. So this is what we are up against. The causal agent of BLD is this little nematode called Lidolenchus crenati. We currently refer to it as subspecies McCannii. That may change in the future. There's a very smart team of folks over in Japan this fall digging into this problem further, and we look forward to hearing what they discover. But this is a very unusual group of nematodes. They are not related to most of the other nematodes that we deal with in agriculture or the ornamental industry. We have some other foliar nematode problems in a very different group of nematodes that cause a different kind of damage. This is really fairly rare and unusual in terms of what we've ever dealt with in the past for nematode management for a lot of reasons. But here is what they look like wiggling around in a dish. So when we are out doing trials and collecting samples and bringing all that material back to our lab, we use a hole puncher actually to punch out a set amount of leaf tissue, put it in dish, and you start to see many of these nematodes swimming out of the leaves and the buds. So always cool to see what that looks like. Also rather challenging to count thousands and thousands of these. So real quick, we believe that it came from Japan. That was where it was described from. There's a chance that it may also be native to some other surrounding areas of Asia, but as far as we know, this nematode seems to be originally from Japan, and we have either part of its genetic heritage here in the States, or maybe we do have a true subspecies. We're going to find out. It doesn't kill beech in Japan. There are some of these banding symptoms, but it does not approach the level of disease severity that we see in the United States and especially in New England, including Maine. So it behaves like a different beast over there. Why exactly that is has yet to be determined. So I'm going to turn it over to Aaron, and he's going to talk a little bit more about this spread. And you see you all right up there in the top right corner. So let's see what Aaron has to say about the boots on the ground.
Okay, thanks, Matt. I'm going to have a pretty couple similar slides there and with regard to spread. So give me a moment while I share my screen and we'll get rolling with the main perspective. All right, can everybody see my presentation? Full screen, great. All right, so beech leaf disease in Maine. I'm happy to be here to talk to you about that. I'm the Maine Forest Service forest pathologist. I provide technical assistance basically to anybody in Maine, and I have statewide responsibility. I'm one pathologist working for the state in a fairly large state as far as New England is concerned. So I provide education and outreach directly via trainings, presentations, woods walks, things of that nature, and then indirectly by creating fact sheets, manuals, website content. I'm also called on to advise people in the state regarding forest health issues, particularly forest pathology related forest health issues. And I do a lot of survey of mainlands for pathogens of concern. And one of those major pathogens of concern for the last couple years or 3 years has been beech leaf disease. Why is beech leaf disease a problem in Maine? Well, we have a lot of beech. So here's our basal area map of beech in Maine, and it's indicated by the color pink. And you can see there's a lot of that color on this map, and some really really heavy beech areas kind of in Oxford, southern Franklin, into Somerset, southern Piscataquis, sorry. But, you know, if you really just take a walk out in the woods, you're going to run into beech all over the place. And it's, you know, right now, a moderate proportion of our beech are impacted, but there's a lot more that could be impacted. The potential for spread is really immense. So Matt already talked about this a little bit, but you know, this is a disease that was first reported in Maine in 2021. Was reported by a landowner in Waldo County in Lincolnville, and after going and visiting that area and also traveling around a little bit more, I found some spots that were perhaps a little bit more advanced in that spot, particularly down on Deer Isle. So it may have been here a little bit earlier, but people just hadn't really picked up on it yet. And as we have a pretty good idea that, you know, the disease affects leaf function, and what we've noticed is that it's starting to kill understory beech trees, seedling saplings, trees that are you know, in a, what's the, I can't remember the correct terminology right off the top of my head right now, but you know, trees that are overtopped and not getting their own sunlight and so forth. We believe that it may eventually kill mature trees, but we haven't seen that yet in our long-term monitoring plots, which I'll talk about in a second. Decline, we think, might be quicker, especially in areas that have really heavy beech bark disease, which is another disease that I won't get into today, but I think many of you are probably familiar with beech bark disease. It causes the blistering and pock marks on the beech bark. That disrupts the flow of nutrients and is another chronic stressor for beech trees. So you got a couple chronic stressors impacting beech, and you start to worry about secondary agents of decline that could, you know, expedite mortality or you know, be responsible for that final thing that kills beech. So we've talked about, Matt's already talked about what causes beech leaf disease, so I won't go into detail here. This is a good opportunity for me to show off one of our pictures that a technician took of a nematode on some brand new equipment that we got from the state. We've been asking for a microscope camera for several years now, and we got one, so we've been having fun with that. Just another close-up of this nematode, and just to give you an idea that these, it's a little bit it's a little bit hard to understand. These creatures are very small. They're just a membrane with a bunch of organelles in it. You wouldn't think that they'd be very robust creatures, but in fact they are. The eggs are very robust, and they can withstand a lot of pH variation, and so can the adults. And they're very capable of spreading in extreme, even in extreme situations. I was listening in on a meeting on beech leaf disease, and some people were talking about drying out the juvenile females and to complete desiccation, and then after a couple hours putting a droplet of water on them, and them eventually wriggling back to life. So they, you know, don't be fooled. These are very formidable pathogens. Let's see here. So we do have, and I understand there's going to be a field component to your meeting, but I just wanted to go over some lookalikes that we see most often in Maine. Matt might also have some other lookalikes that he encounters in his part of the country. But on the left here, you have Araneum galls made by an Areophyid mite. The similarity there is that the damage is between the veins, but the thing that is different is that banding is really not consistent, and underneath the leaf there's a velvety patch that starts out white and turns red during the season. So I get a lot of calls about people saying, oh, I've got beech leaf disease. They send me a picture of this, and I say, well, consider yourself to be one of the lucky ones. You just have a lookalike. Woolly beech leaf aphid is another one that causes some of the chlorotic symptoms. People see deformed leaves, and they think, oh my goodness, I've got beech leaf disease. But when they unfurl that leaf, they see some of this white flocculence or like waxy fuzz under the leaf that indicates the presence of this woolly beech aphid. So that's another lookalike. And then there's beech anthracnose, which some people will mistake for beech leaf disease, but these are really just dark lesions that don't necessarily always form consistent banding in between leaf veins. So this is one that I get less calls about, but it is one to keep your eye out for when you're looking at beech leaves and evaluating whether or not an area has beech leaf disease. So how does it spread in Maine? Based on pretty recent research, there's a Maine migration, a significant migration period, I should say, during wet periods in late August to October. And again, it's the juvenile females that are responsible for dispersal. So I'm thinking right now, it's been so dry here for the past several weeks, not a really great opportunity for the nematodes to migrate into the buds for overwintering, but also get carried away on a misty breeze during a rainstorm. So maybe this will slow the spread a little bit, but I was just in Ellsworth actually yesterday at Camp Jordan for our annual staff meeting, and just driving, I kind of took a back way. Just that entire area just seems to be completely enveloped with pretty severe symptoms of beech leaf disease, and I don't see any beech in that area that don't have it. So. But we're really concerned about the further spread to the further northern counties. So talking about spread, so we know that beech leaf disease was first reported in Ohio in 2012, and that's that area. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but it's just below Lake Erie. That one light county was the first place it was detected back in 2012. So this is what the county map looked like in 2020, and from my perspective, sitting here in Maine, I felt pretty safe. I mean, it was just down in Connecticut. I wasn't too concerned about it, and that was a little bit foolish of me because by 2021, we found it in Maine in Lincolnville, but not only in Waldo County, we found it in Knox County, we found it in we found it in southern Penobscot as well, and in what's that one? Oh yeah, sorry, I think it's Lincoln County. Sorry, yes. Anyway, you can see the map. Hopefully, you know your Maine counties a little bit better than I do. I've been here for 8 years, but somehow I still don't know them all cold turkey. So, but anyway, so confirmed in 4 Maine counties in 2021. By 2022, we had 6 confirmed counties. And then by 2023, in December, we had it in 11 counties. Now we have it in 15 counties. And the only reason I haven't found it in Franklin County is because I've been so busy chasing other things around that I haven't gotten to go there and really take a good look. And I'd like to do that yet this fall so I can just fill out the map of Maine for BLD. I like to show this slide just for perspective. So hemlock woolly adelgid spread fairly in a similar distribution pattern over the course of 70 years, and beech leaf disease has been able to do that in about 12. So it's just to give you some perspective on the ability of this pest to spread. This is our Maine Forest Service beech leaf disease dashboard. As of this morning, I took a screenshot and put this into the presentation. So we have I think we have a problem with data because I know that we've had more than 189 reports from the public and more than 70 reports from our staff, but this all equals 176 towns confirmed positive, and 79 of those towns are from this year. So it's been a very busy year. We've been getting a lot of reports, and one really positive thing that I would highlight from this beech leaf disease story in Maine is the amount of engagement with the public, and the public really being a great partner in reporting to us. I mean, I'm just, like I said, I'm one pathologist, So having the public really being communicative and not being afraid to reach out, and for us to provide tools for them to easily do that has been it's been a great thing for my program. And I really appreciate people just sending me an email, give me a call, send me a text or whatever, and let me know, what you're seeing out there. It might not be beech leaf, or it might be beech leaf disease this time, but it might be something else next time. So don't ever hesitate to reach out to the Maine Forest Service to report something that you see that's unusual or concerning to you. If you want to keep current on beech leaf disease distribution, there's a map that looks a lot like this on our website, along with an FAQ, and I try to keep the information fresh. Haven't been able to update the map recently, but hoping to do that when in our next at the beginning of this next month, when we put out our monthly forest health newsletter. And if you don't subscribe to our forest health newsletter, that's another great way to keep up to date on things that we're seeing and our technicians and other professionals are seeing out in the field. Excuse me. So I get this question a lot because they see what's happening in the forest with our beech trees, and some people get really upset. What is Maine doing about beech leaf disease? We're doing as much as we can, considering our resources and the speed at which this disease is traveling. So firstly, we have beech leaf disease long-term monitoring plots. We have 9 plots from Bangor south to Mount Agameticus down in Kittery area, and then as far east into Acadia National Park. These 9 plots are part of a network of plots in the northeast. This is work funded by the U.S. Forest Service. We work closely with the forest pathologists out of the Durham, New Hampshire office. Each year we measure crown characteristics. We estimate symptoms. We measure growth. We look at seedlings and regen. And we're just trying to learn how this disease is impacting our forest and impacting beech. So that's something that we get out and do starting usually in late July, and we usually wrap that up in 6 weeks or so. Just because it's hard for me to get enough help, technician time, because there's so many other things going on in the forest. Takes us a little bit longer to line up days with good weather where we can really do a good job at these long-term monitoring plots. Another trial that we started is kind of a copy, or somewhat of a copy, of the original trial that they did in Ohio with polyphosphate 30, which is a soil drench that's a high potassium fertilizer, and there's other components in it, and maybe Matt knows more of the details of that. But we decided to partner with Viles Arboretum and our urban forestry group within the Maine Forest Service, and we started that last year. Got some funding to start treating around 15 trees, which is not that many, but we have treated trees and controls in 3 different size classes. And we did our first full evaluation following a treatment this year. We didn't really notice anything, but my understanding is that this is a little bit of a longer term thing. You treat your trees for a couple of years before you start to see the benefits of it. And the idea there is try to keep, it's a lower cost way of keeping more trees healthy. And a newer thing that we just got funding to do is protecting beech bark disease resistant beech trees. So beech tree genetics via systemic macro injections using a product called Arbotect 20S. So this is a macro injection. You mix the product with water, and this is something that a registered pesticide applicator has to do. And so I've been partnering with IF&W, so Inland Fisheries and Wildlife, and some other groups, trying to locate smooth beech, or those beech that demonstrate resistance to beech bark disease, and get 3 trees or so injected at each one of these sites, just to preserve those genetic traits, which make beech is a wonderful tree. It's kind of underappreciated because of its problems with beech bark disease, but these resistant trees are ecologically and economically valuable, and I think it's important for us to protect those in the same way that we're doing things like this to protect our ash trees, as emerald ash borer kind of works its way through our forests. We also facilitate research efforts, and this is something that I really enjoy doing. This particular picture here is from some of Matt's folks with Bartlett tree experts in the U.S. Forest Service. So this is a non-structural carbohydrate study that was being done on a couple of our long-term monitoring plots here in Maine. So, my role in something like this is to, just serve in a supportive role, help in any way I can, make the landowner contact, since I know a lot of folks here in Maine and they know me. And so I can sort of facilitate communication and getting permissions and so forth for research efforts. We also do leaf collections for population genetic studies that are being done in the Connecticut Ag Research Station by Bob Mara, who's one of the people that's over in Japan right now, trying to learn more about beech leaf disease and the beech, the nematode that is responsible for that disease over in Japan. So just to wrap up my portion of this, the Maine Forest Service is a forest health resource for anybody in Maine. We provide technical assistance, education, and outreach. And if you have questions about beech leaf disease, beech bark disease, anything related to forest health, we are a resource that can be called upon to provide non-biased information. And we do everything we can to stay really up to date, keeping in contact with people like Matt and Andrew Lloyd and some of the great people with Bartlett and other people from the U.S. Forest Service and across the country. We do our utmost to be knowledgeable and up to date on these things, and to provide assistance, technical assistance to folks like you all with the Ellsworth Arbor Committee. So that's it for me. If you have any questions, I think maybe let's save those for the end. I want to make sure that Matt gets plenty of time to cover what he's going to cover. Thank you very much for your attention. There's a forest in Maine, probably not a lot of beech in that particular picture, but that's from up in Baxter. So from a helicopter, it was a great day. So anyway, thank you for your attention, and I will stop sharing now and turn it over to Matt.
Thanks, Aaron. That was great. And spoiler alert, that non-structural carbohydrate study, the data is looking really good, consistent with the hypothesis. Essentially, the more severe the beech leaf disease, the less stored structural carbohydrates we found in those tissues. So the naive or unaffected beech trees had the most stored resources, and the worse the disease, the less stored resources, which that was the hypothesis, and it's nice when things work out. So we look forward to getting that published with Cameron next year, hopefully. Anyway, let's jump back in. I want to talk about the life cycle of the problem real quick, because that really helps inform management strategies, and then I'll go over some of those. So, okay, sharing screen again. There we go. So this nematode has a very interesting life cycle. And the reason I start back here is anytime you're trying to design management strategies for new pests, you have to study not only what kind of pest is it, is it a fungus, an insect, a nematode, and understand the kinds of chemistries and tools appropriate for that pest. But you also have to understand its entire life cycle in pretty good detail so that you can start to pinpoint the right periods of that life cycle that are appropriate for different kinds of management tools. So again, this nematode is really unusual in terms of the kinds of pests we've ever had to manage in the past. Basically in the spring, that is when you can clearly see these symptoms. When the tree leaves out and all of a sudden, these symptoms are right there in your face, you can see them. However, that's not when the damage occurs. The damage occurs following this late summer fall migration period, when the nematodes, as Aaron mentioned, primarily the the young females, move into bud tissue. And once they're in the bud tissue, it's extremely hard to manage them. Buds, by their very nature, that is the protected part of the tree that survives exposure to all those harsh winter conditions in order to produce next year's leaves, right? So what we're trying to do here is prevent that dispersal to buds from happening. Again, once they're in the buds, it's extremely hard to target them with any management tools shy of shearing off those twigs that are infested. And once they are in those buds, the nematodes reproduce and feed and cause the damage that you see that following spring. So again here, life cycle, what we're trying to do is prevent those buds from getting infected so that we protect next year's flush of growth. So here's a map showing some of our research plots over the past couple of years that we've used to develop our current treatments. What I'm trying to show here is that we have a lot of field sites separated across different types of beech growing situations. Some of these are large nurseries with rows and rows and rows of infested beech. Some are woodlots, more similar to what you have in the forest there, where we're targeting individual trees. So through all of these sites and data collection, we have developed a couple of effective programs. The first was a foliar program that we discovered back in the trial went out in 21, 22, and we found an active ingredient that was very potent against this nematode, which is great. And if applied to the foliage in early and midsummer, we could successfully knock out the nematode populations. They would therefore not get into the buds, and then the next season you have much improved foliage. So we have published this at this point. I don't need to go into the details. There's a few examples of what that looks like on some of the treated sites in Ohio, before and after on the left and right. This product is available in Maine. It's not the cheapest product out there, unfortunately, but it is available. We applied for what's called a 2EE special label so that this product could be used for beech trees. Since that original study, we've had now another whole series of field trials trying to bring down and make this program more sustainable. One of the biggest things we did was studying, what is the right dose for this experimental product on this new novel pest. So we just wrapped up this study, and we've dramatically cut down the dose of the product needed to be equally as effective, which is really good from what we call an integrated pest management standpoint, where there's a very important principle where you want to put out the least amount of product into the environment, as well as cost savings, while still maintaining efficacy. So we're going to publish this study shortly. But again, here's a picture of untreated tree, which is right next to one of the treated trees at a much lower dose than was previously used, and we had equally good efficacy. So we've continued fine-tuning this program. Here's another, just a snapshot from a Wall Street Journal article last month that was kind of cool. The edge of the picture there, you see some beech trees. These are beech trees that were on our foliar program last year, looking much better. And if you turn around and look at the other side of this enormous historic beech alley, these are beech that were not treated. About half the alley was treated, half not treated, and these trees are still pretty severely affected. So we'll see how they look in the future, treated, non-treated, left to right. So as Aaron mentioned, the other program that we've discovered and continued to develop is this injection treatment using a product called Arbitect. Arbitect is really neat. It has been used by arborists in the Northeast for many, many years. It really rose to prominence during the Dutch elm disease era. And a good friend of ours, Dr. Jay Stipes at Virginia Tech, who's still around, was instrumental in developing this tool for Dutch elm disease. The reason that we were interested in it and decided to try it and start some field trials was that the active ingredient here, the chemistry behind the product, is called thiabendazole. And this has a really unusual history. It's not just a fungicide. It was also used from years as a anthelmintic, antiparasitic veterinary drug. Back in the 60s, this was used to treat whole herds of sheep and goats and horses and such for gut parasites, all of which that they were treating were nematodes. It's a similar group of organisms, these roundworms. Some of the products are still around today. There's one of the veterinary products that contains thiabendazole. This was even used as a human treatment for a while until they developed better drugs in the same class. So we're repurposing this old chemistry that has a rich history of anti-worm usages for beech leaf disease, even though for the past 30 years, we've really only used it as a fungicide because it is a good fungicide, but it's also a really good anti-parasitic drug for some types of nematodes. So here's for example, one of our field sites in Ohio where we put out injection treatments in July. And the untreated controls, when we went back to sample the buds that season, that fall, actually, I think we sampled these in March. So the end of the season of dormant buds. Untreated controls had, about 800 nematodes per gram of bud tissue. Again, there's a lot of worms in these buds. And then the treated trees, we did a pretty good job of knocking out those populations, not allowing them the opportunity to get into the bud. So that was the goal here. And then when we go back the following year and look at the symptoms, what actually happened, what we visually observe, there's the difference in, there we go. So the untreated controls were statistically similar. There is natural variation year to year on all of these sites. But then the treated trees, we got from an average of about 60% of the canopy showing banding symptoms, knocked that down to just under 10% of the canopy showing banding symptoms. So that was a pretty successful trial. A lot of the trees went from severe symptoms down to very low. This really helped us start to learn more about the injection timing. Here's another site where we put out the application much later in this was late August, I believe. And this one did not work nearly as well. Now, compared to the untreated trees, this treated tree looks significantly better. It has canopy. But if you look closely, there's still a lot of banding on these leaves. And when we counted all of the nematodes in the buds from these trees, that was consistent. We reduced the population, but not entirely. There was still some in there. Therefore, there were some symptoms. So this, again, really helps us look at the life cycle of the nematode, look at its timing, when are things happening, and then we need to put out these treatments so that they are active ahead of time before the nematodes get into the buds. Here's what those two trees look like from the ground. The untreated control, similar to what you're seeing there in Maine, pretty rapid defoliation. BLD's only been on this site for a couple of years now. And then the treated tree, it looks better from a distance for sure, though it does still have a lot of banding symptoms. So based on the early results from our Arbotech sites, we wrote up this package and got this treatment applied for in a lot of states, including Maine, which is great. So it is being used on some sites. So all of this, let's start to put this together now. What do we do to protect individual trees before BLD gets to an area? Well, we want to keep the trees as healthy as possible. This might include soil testing and fertilizing if fertilizing is necessary. Typically, when you're soil sampling beech, often fertilizing is not necessary. And if you don't need to fertilize something, don't do it. But mulching, root protection, good cultural management is always a good practice. And everything I'm talking about here is really going to be designed for you all dealing with urban, suburban beech trees, less so forest management. That is a different type of management strategy. And as Aaron mentioned, different kinds of projects that we're working on for that. But for urban trees, we do have some options: cultural care, the phosphite products. For post-infection, we do have this foliar program that directly targets the nematode and can suppress symptoms quite effectively. And also the root flare injection, which could be used preventatively if you know the tree is about to be severely infected, say it's, in the next county over or the next street over, or post-infection, and can effectively knock out the symptoms if the tree still has enough strength in it to recover. So again, I'm trying to separate here the situation. In the forest, we don't have any effective management strategies yet. That work is ongoing. Aaron mentioned it. We're also developing some silviculture research sites. But for urban and suburban trees in the landscape, we do have some pretty effective tools now. Sometimes. It's not appropriate for every beech, and I really want to emphasize that. So let me get to that. Before I go there, we do have a lot of information available online. I like to make these posters since it's a nice visual representation of research. So all of our research posters are available online. We have one publication out. I'm going to just skip through all of this. Publications pending. This is what I want to mention for you all. So often there's sort of a knee-jerk reaction to these invasive species issues. One of the knee-jerk reactions is remove all of the trees. You know, they all have this pest, let's chop them all down. Another knee-jerk reaction is let's treat and try to save everyone. Neither of those are typically good knee-jerk reactions, nor are they appropriate for this beech leaf disease situation. One thing we know about beech leaf disease by now is that it's not going to kill every tree, you know, the season that it hits the tree. As mentioned, you haven't seen any mortality in Maine yet. You know, in some states, they say mortality 5 to 7 years. That does vary. But you have some time to think about this carefully and weigh your options before you make a decision. The other reaction is to try to save every tree, and we would strongly not encourage that because there are a lot more problems out there than just beech leaf disease. And I know you've dealt with this with other trees as well. So for example, urban tree issues that are really, really common, you know, you might have buried root collars, poor pruning, topping, canopies that are already in decline from other issues. Soil compaction is a universal urban problem, improper mulching, things to be aware of, to look for. And then there's other severe disease issues as well. Phytophthora bleeding canker is very prominent on a lot of beech trees and landscapes. Beech bark disease, as mentioned, of course, and the beech bark scale that is part of that issue. And then another issue that's really, really common that we see in a lot of these old historic beech trees is an issue called brittle cinder fungus or Kretschmeria. It's not so much of a problem in forests, but urban trees, yeah, it's a problem. And if you have a beech tree that has a significant amount of this brittle cinder fungus issue, that is not a tree that you would want to be investing resources in to try to save. So what we would encourage you all to do is think about this problem carefully and start with an inventory if possible so that you know how many beech trees are you going to be dealing with here? How many are in good health? How many are in really poor health? How many have significant canker or Kretschmeria or maybe, you know, other structural problems? Don't try to save every tree if a lot of those trees are already in decline. Think about how to prioritize the tree. Maybe it has great historical significance or, you know, is in a really prominent location. Start with that step. Give yourself a little bit of time to make these decisions before you rush to one extreme or the other. If you decide that you have some trees in urban areas that are in good condition besides BLD and are worth treating, then you can use the available tools to do so. Okay, I'm going to wrap up here so we have time for questions. This has been a colossal group effort. You know, we've got a lot of folks working on this, a lot of collaborators as well in several state and universities. So Beth Brantley is a great local contact for you. She's up in New Hampshire and often gets up to Maine as well. So just a shout out to the whole team and thanks Aaron as well, of course. Okay, I think we have time for Q&A, right, Tabitha?
I think we do. Thank you
Great.
both. That was incredible. I learned a lot there myself. Let's see. So I will open this up to the attendees, both here in the room that I'm in and also online. If anyone has any questions, If you are an attendee via Zoom, go ahead and raise your hand and with the little raise hand button, and I'll click you in and allow you to talk there. And anyone in the room here, the microphone is just here, so you'll have to come over here and ask your question. I have a question to start with, and my question is there any funding for homeowners to treat their beech that you've seen either in the state of Maine or in other states where this disease has taken hold, whether it was beech that had beech bark disease or didn't have beech bark disease? Has the federal government or any states made funding available?
Aaron, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So from a Maine perspective, no, there is no funding and no programming at this time available for treating trees, and there hasn't really been a history of that either. You know, with brown-tail moth, for example, I know many of you are familiar with that. Eventually, the state did provide some funding to towns to do various things like clipping out webs. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm not saying it's never going to happen, but I wouldn't hold my breath. I mean, if you really want to take care of your beech trees, I think looking for the funding to do that and not waiting for the state to come in and provide resources for that. I think that's always a complicated issue for the state. Again, at this time, there are no programs in place, unfortunately.
Yeah, I second that. In fact, this disease has been one of the most frustrating from a funding standpoint that we've seen in years. More visual issues like spotted lanternfly and some of the others historically got a lot of funding, a lot of momentum, a lot of agencies that got programs rolling and people getting aware of the issues. We did not see that with BLD. In fact, for quite a long time, and still persisting a little bit, BLD was just chronically underfunded. Huge kudos to the forestry folks in Maine that are getting some initiatives rolling. But it was very difficult for quite a long time for even university folks and other forestry folks to get any level of momentum or funding for this going. In fact, that's why we really stepped in to start getting a lot of this management work kickstarted, because there wasn't anyone else working on it at the time. And trees were starting to die, so we needed to get something going. Faith Campbell at the Center for Invasive Species Prevention wrote about this in several hard-hitting blogs, and she really helped draw attention to this lack of funding issue. So there are a couple of articles out there talking about why it didn't get as much momentum as other issues. But yeah, no funds that I'm aware of either in any of the states we work in to help individuals with this issue.
That is a real bummer for all of us, I think. And another question, if nobody else has questions right now, I have more. What is the latest stage in which you can treat these beech trees? Currently, right now, I think, especially in North Ellsworth, where I've seen a lot of the problem around my own home, I think we're in year 3-ish of it. And as Aaron had said, it appears that all of them are really infected. And we've lost a lot of the canopy there. So when is it too late for me or other homeowners to inject these trees or to, treat them?
Can I take that one, Aaron, first?
Absolutely, all you.
So this is a really good question, and it actually comes up at almost every meeting because people want to know, is it too late? BLD does move fast in some areas, faster than others. One really interesting thing that has happened in some areas is that beech trees that are hit really hard and really fast undergo a near complete defoliation some seasons, and then the following season leaf out again and actually look pretty good. So it doesn't always happen in a nice, progressive, good, better, bad, worse, dead pattern. The idea there is that if the tree is so heavily affected that it drops all of its leaves, it just dropped the vast majority of the nematode population affecting that tree as well. And if it does that in summer, before the nematodes have a chance to migrate to buds, the next season's buds actually come out looking pretty good. So I would hesitate to cut down the tree, right away. Learn a little bit more about the problem first. From a practical standpoint, you have to have canopy to do either of the treatments we've developed. If you're doing a foliar program, there has to be foliage there to treat at the right time. If you're doing an injection treatment, you have to have foliage there as well, because injection treatments rely on the pool of water going from, the pressure that the leaves, the transpiration is occurring to pull moisture up from the roots. That is how an injection treatment occurs. You can't do that on a tree if it's already lost all of its canopy. So from a practical standpoint, if the tree is in decent condition and has a canopy, even if it's a bit of a thin canopy, it can usually still be treated. If you consider, is it something you want to invest money in? Does it have other issues that are severe or not? Was it very healthy and thriving before BLD a year or two ago? Those are more ideal candidates, I would say. Aaron?
Yeah, no, I have nothing to add. That was a very informative question for me as well. Yeah, really, we're just getting into the injection, the world of injecting for beech leaf disease. And so that's great information. I appreciate that.
Awesome. Anyone still? I have more. No question is a bad question. Put that out there for everyone. And then I think my last question that I wrote down during your talks was, what are you recommending if this does end up devastating our forests here and we lose this species, what are you recommending to either plant, or do you foresee taking the place specifically as an understory tree, which I think many of the beech trees here in Maine have become, given beech bark disease? So what do you see as the species that will likely come in and take over or take up that space in the forest?
Well, here in Maine, there's going to be a lot of different scenarios that unfold. Firstly, there really is no replacement for beech from an ecological standpoint, especially. It's such an important mass species, and it has an incredibly high calorie content per unit mass. I think if you want to replace it functionally, you have to look for another mass species. And is that going to be oak that comes in kind of as a climate is warming a little bit, and oak is able to grow further north than it has been able to in the past. Or will other nut trees fill a similar ecological role? It's really hard to say. So one thing that I really worry about replacing some of this, some of the ground that beech inhabits right now is, when you lose functional canopy and there starts to be some more, and maybe you saw this in one of the pictures in my slide, what is Maine doing about beech leaf disease? There's a lot of light coming through the canopy that used to not get anywhere near the forest floor because of the dense shade that beech provides, and really shades out a lot of competition. What I worry about, especially here in the southern half of Maine, where we have more invasive species like bittersweet or oriental bittersweet, honeysuckle, barberry, multiflora rose, some of these things really taking up a lot of that space in what used to be a well-shaded beech understory. So I worry about the invasive plants quite a bit. I'm not trying to avoid the question of, what to plant, but I think there's going to have to be a pretty concerted effort to prevent unwanted species from moving into those previously well-shaded beech forests.
I couldn't agree more. The invasive issue is really worrying a lot of folks, including further south where they have different invasives, of course. But yes, that is going to be a big concern. And we already have very poor forest regeneration in a lot of areas, due in large part to white-tailed deer populations. So some folks are looking at large areas of exclusion in areas with BLD to maybe give some of these other species a chance to regenerate without deer pressure if there is BLD opening up more light into the canopy as those trees decline. Deer exclusion is hard and expensive itself, but that's one other option that we're even considering trying to factor into some of our more silviculture-based experiments to see what we could do there. Yeah, oaks, hickories, some of our folks are suggesting those as more native options. It's easier in the urban landscape, honestly. There's other options. In urban areas, people are planting hornbeam. If for people that like hedges, although there's issues with hornbeam too. Katsura, if Katsura can grow in your area. Perodia is another one that's really underused and fills a very similar ornamental niche to beech. And there's some really exciting work going on in Perodia cultivars and breeding right now. Very few other problems. So totally different situations, you know. There's natives, non-native issues in there, ornamental, ecological factors. But yeah, the forest planting problem, I honestly really look forward to hearing what you and your teams start recommending as you learn more about this issue, because we need help with that too.
Yeah, it's difficult up here in Maine. We're limited by, our zone. I live in 5A, but, a lot of the state's in 4 and some of it's in 3. And so we're really limited. Katsura is really not something that we can use except for on the coast. And, there's a lot of those non-natives and even natives. You mentioned hickories. Like, we really can't grow anything other than maybe shagbark in the southern part of the state, bitternut, perhaps in some of those areas too. We're just really limited by our hardiness zone, and so it's a unique challenge replacing beech in the forest and also in horticultural urban settings.
I do have both Perodia and Katsura currently growing in my yard in North Ellsworth successfully. Love them both. Great trees from my urban forestry days. I think that's it. Anybody? All right. I just want to say thank you both for talking with us today. Incredibly useful information. And, I look forward to following both of you and your research. And hopefully you find the cure and you save our beech trees, no pressure. But I also want to let everyone know that's here today that the Arbor Commission, we invite everyone from the public to join us. We meet on the first Monday of every month in City Hall chambers from 8:15 to 10:15. Please come and be our first public people from the public, our citizens to come and attend our meeting. We are very passionate about preserving, protecting, planting our trees here in Ellsworth. And we look forward to hearing what our citizens and residents have to say about their trees. So consider coming one of these days. Again, thank you all. And yeah, I hope you all have a great day.
All right. And Tabitha, I will send you a link to subscribe to the Maine Forest Service Forest Health Conditions reports that come out monthly during the growing season. I think that could be something that your group could be interested in, and it'll also help you keep tabs on those things that are of concern to forest health here in Maine.
Excellent. Thank you. We will definitely use that.
Okay.
All right, everyone. Have a great day. Thanks again.
Thanks, Tabitha.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye all.